You've probably seen the headlines about this really strange thing happening in China. They're building hundreds of brand new airports that are just empty. I mean, most of them lose millions of dollars every single year, so people have started calling them ghost airports. And at first glance, yeah, it looks like a massive economic blunder. But what if it's not a blunder at all? What if losing money is actually part of the plan? And what if their real purpose has nothing to do with passengers and everything to do with power?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? It just doesn't make any sense. Why on earth would you pour billions of dollars into these incredible, state-of-the-art facilities just to let them sit there, collecting dust and debt? It's a puzzle that's had economists scratching their heads for years.
So the official story you'll hear is pretty straightforward. China's state media will tell you these are all about connecting remote areas, boosting local economies and getting tourists into places like Tibet. And look, on some level, that's probably true. But it doesn't really explain the sheer number of them, the crazy financial losses, or why they're being built in very specific strategic locations. To really get what's happening, you have to stop looking at the money and start looking at something else entirely: military strategy.
Okay, so every single modern military has this one huge weakness, a real Achilles heel that's only gotten more dangerous with today's technology. And that weakness is concentration. Now check out this quote from a Rand Corporation report. It's actually talking about the threat to U.S. bases, but here's the thing. Chinese military planners know that this sword cuts both ways. They understand better than anyone that the biggest threat to their Air Force in the 21st century isn't another country's fighter jet. It's a massive wave of precise, long-range missiles that can wipe out an entire airbase before a single one of their planes can even get off the ground.
And these maps from Rand, wow, they show you the problem perfectly. Take a look here in 1996. See how the threat from Chinese missiles is pretty limited? Okay, now watch what happens by 2017. That red threat bubble just explodes. We are talking thousands of missiles that can now hit major air bases like Kadena and Anderson. And again, this isn't just a problem for the US. It shows you the exact strategic nightmare that China's own military planners are desperately trying to solve for themselves.
So you can see how this leads to a pretty terrifying thought for any military planner. If all of your multi-billion-dollar aircraft are parked at just a few well-known giant bases, you've basically just painted a huge bullseye on your most important assets. One successful first strike could be completely paralyzing. So how do you fix a vulnerability that big?
Well, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. The answer is a classic strategy called force dispersal. Instead of packing your whole Air Force into a few big bases, you spread it out. You scatter it across dozens, maybe even hundreds of smaller spots. For an enemy, this is a total nightmare. They can't possibly target everything at once. But building hundreds of new military bases is incredibly expensive, and it's also a pretty obvious and aggressive move. So, what if there was a quieter, sneakier way to do it? And this, right here, is where the entire puzzle just clicks into place. The answer is a massive national strategy in China called military-civil fusion.
Military-civil fusion, or MCF for short, is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a national, top-down mandate to make sure that any new civilian project, whether it's technology or infrastructure, is built from day one to also serve the needs of the People's Liberation Army. That line we usually draw between civilian and military, under this doctrine, it gets intentionally erased.
And let me be clear, this isn't some informal guideline or a vague suggestion. It's literally the law. Take the 2017 National Defense Transportation Law. It basically mandates that new transport projects, we're talking ports, highways, railways, and yes, airports, must be built to dual-use military specifications.
So what does that actually look like in the real world?
Well, it means that a new commercial port might have to be built with berths strong enough for a Navy destroyer. It means a new logistics hub might have hidden storage for military fuel and munitions. And most importantly for our story, it means a new little regional airport, supposedly built for a few tourist flights a week, is constructed with a runway that's secretly strong enough to handle a heavy military transport plane or a fully loaded fighter jet.
Okay, so now we have the why, that's force dispersal, and we have the how, that's the military-civil fusion doctrine. So now let's go look for the proof. Is this actually happening out in the open?
Let's zero in on a perfect case study. This is Long Tien Air Base. Its location is no coincidence. It's just over 100 miles from Taiwan's capital, Taipei. For a long time, it was a pretty quiet, boring little airfield.
But then, some sharp-eyed defense analysts over at the War Zone were looking at satellite photos, and they noticed that something had changed. Something really, really significant.
And here it is. This is the smoking gun. On the left, you've got a satellite image from 2018.
See that? It's just a simple open-air parking spot for a few jets. Now, look at the right. Just a few years later in 2022, that open spot is gone, and in its place, a whole row of brand-new, hardened aircraft shelters. These are concrete bunkers built for one reason and one reason only, to protect military aircraft from an attack. You don't build these for Ryanair. This is a purely military upgrade hiding in plain sight.
And it gets even more interesting. It wasn't just the shelters. The analysts also spotted new, protected drive-through bunkers, which are pretty much perfect for storing and loading up ammunition. They saw modern flanker fighter jets on the tarmac. And they even saw old J-6 jets, which most experts believe have been converted into drones. Maybe to be used as a huge first-wave swarm to soak up an enemy's air defenses. Langtian is just one crystal-clear example of a supposedly minor airfield getting a major upgrade for a potential conflict.
So let's circle all the way back to that first question we had about the money. Because if these airports are really dual-use military assets, then we have to completely change the way we think about their profitability.
On a normal civilian balance sheet, yeah, these airports look like a total disaster. You just see red ink, annual operating loss, underutilized, economic inefficiency, debt. But the moment you put on that military-civil fusion lens, the entire picture flips. That operating loss suddenly becomes a strategic gain. Underutilized is actually surge capacity. Economic inefficiency is really force dispersal. And that debt, it's just a tiny fraction of what it would cost to build a full-blown military base from the ground up.
I mean, think about it like this. Let's say a remote airport loses $10 million a year, but its existence as a pre-built, ready-to-go military base saves the PLA $1 billion in construction costs, all while giving them priceless strategic depth. Is that airport really a failure, or is it actually doing its real job perfectly?
So here's the bottom line. It's not a ghost airport. It's a subsidized, pre-positioned military asset, hiding out in the open. The money it loses every year? That's just the maintenance cost for keeping a dormant military facility ready to be activated at a moment's notice.
So how can you spot one of these for yourself? Well, here's a quick checklist of the telltale signs to look for. Keep an eye out for things like hardened aircraft shelters or new munitions bunkers suddenly appearing on satellite maps. Check if the runway seems way too long and reinforced for the kind of small planes it's supposed to serve. And most of all, pay attention to location. Is it suspiciously close to a strategic hotspot like the Taiwan Strait or the Indian border? Or is it right next to a major rail line that could move heavy equipment fast?
And that really brings us to the final thought, and it's a big one. This whole ghost airport mystery isn't just about airports. It's a lesson in how almost any piece of civilian infrastructure can have a second, hidden purpose. So if an airport can double as a dormant airbase, then what about a commercial seaport, or a high-speed rail line, or even a highway? It's a powerful reminder that in the world of modern geopolitics, sometimes the real story is hiding in plain sight.